Welcome to Marvelous Disney, the podcast that discusses the most recent doings at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. This is entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the amazing Aaron Adams, and I are recording this week's episode on Monday, October 19th, 2020. And Aaron, just today, I was thinking back on the time when, I want to say, was it 2 years ago when we visited you in your home?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I remember you showing off, or not showing off, just displaying your amazing collection of Marvel stuff. In fact, I was particularly impressed with your Captain America shield, the heavy metal, beautiful, detailed. Was that a movie replica, or where did you get that?
That was the 75th anniversary edition that had come out, I want to say, about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they had a plastic version for 100. They had a metal version for 300. Mm-hmm. And it was an anniversary gift for the wife because she's the Captain America fan in the house.
Okay.
So technically that serves. And I'll tell you, that girl skipped out of the mall just happy as can be carrying that thing. And on the way out, we had been approached by at least half a dozen people about, where did you get that? How much was it? Can I have it? It was a real attraction piece. And my very good friend McConnell that was on the show with us for the Black Panther episode, he visited not very long ago. And when he saw that, he goes, that goes in the will to me, you understand.
Okay. Well, now it's interesting you mentioned plastic edition, metal edition, because today I came across Hasbro is now selling a Marvel's Legends Avengers Captain America shield, only this one is deliberately tied to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. In fact, that's the exact name. Marvel Legends Avengers Falcon and the Winter Soldier Captain America Shield Prop Replica. It's 24 inches across with adjustable straps, but given the price point is $114.99, I'm guessing plastic, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I would imagine that there was some very minor details that they had changed to the design of the shield, where it's like they almost gave it a couple aerodynamic grooves near the points of the star or something, like in the ridges. And you notice that there's like a subtle change in the trailer for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But yeah, most certainly at that price point, I'd be very willing to bet that's a plastic one. But it still looks good.
I don't know.
Hanging on the wall, absolutely shouldn't have any problems with that being a beautiful centerpiece in the home.
This collectible says, inspired by the shield that appears in Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney+. Which, remember, if production of that limited series hadn't shut down in Prague back on March 10th, Falcon and the Winter Soldier would actually be airing on Disney Plus right now. In fact, that 6-episode run was supposed to have started on Friday, October 9th, with season 2 of The Mandalorian then starting in late November on the 20th or thereabouts. And earlier this month, on October 7th, McDonald's began offering Happy Meal toys that also keyed off of Marvel Studios' theatrical releases and limited series that were supposed to be happening in this particular window of time.
Nothing was titled Death of Qui-Gon Jinn, was it?
No.
I just want to make sure that nothing was really leaked during that. Okay, cool.
No. I mean, for example, the 9 toys that are offered, there's a Black Widow toy. If everything had gone according to plan, Black Widow would have completed its theatrical run at this point and would now be available for purchase on Blu-ray or DVD. So that toy would have helped raise awareness of that Walt Disney Studios home entertainment release. Likewise, there's a Winter Soldier and Falcon toy, which was supposed to promote that limited series. And there's even a Vision and Scarlet Witch toy. That was supposed to begin its 6-episode limited run on Disney Plus in late December this year. And, again, if things a little bit early January of 2021.
For some reason, the idea of WandaVision toys as a Happy Meal thing is confounding to my brain, because the idea of WandaVision is Wanda is mentally broken from the loss of her love and creates an alternate reality. And it's like, yes, that's a beautiful toy for a child. Mentally damaged, creating an alternate world to live in because they can't cope with reality is the message I'd like to send to my children growing up.
Okay, so do you remember when Batman Returns came out in 83, 84?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. They also did Happy Meals for that.
Yeah.
Parents really came down hard on McDonald's for as dark as those were. Though I have to ask a question now. Again, you've been collecting for years, and if you were advising somebody, a Happy Meal toy right now, on average, runs $2.49 to $3.29. So roughly for about a third of what you'd pay for this plastic Captain America shield, you could get all 9 of these Marvel-themed Happy Meal toys. So 10 years from now, what do you honestly think would be worth more? The Captain America shield or a complete set of these Marvel Happy Meal toys?
It depends on the sucker with the open wallet that wants to buy it. Because you could get about anything from the right person. There was a conversation recently about the state of comic books. There are some people in the comic book industry, or used to be a very large part of it, that think you should just shut down comic books right now because they're broken and flawed. Because really, we're only catering to the man-child. These are not really for kids as much anymore. And it's usually adult nerds like me who spend outrageous amounts of money on collectibles. Kids don't have that expendable income. They're not buying the Amazing Fantasy number 15 for $300,000 or whatever the going rate is for that today. These are adults and collectors. And the idea from this individual was it's broken because it's all adults and it's all collectors and it's all the crybaby type people that is not cool. And we should just trash it all and start over and really look at the kids and find out how do we communicate to new people that haven't been on this train for the last 30 years because we're always catering to the collector. And we shouldn't be. And so when you ask the question of what's the value of that, it brings up that argument of it's not about the dollar, it's about the joy. Does the kid care about the dollar value in the future? No, only I do. And that's where the system is broken. So I would have to pose to answer your question in a way that moves society forward. It's about what brings you joy. And as soon as it doesn't bring you joy, throw it away. Donate it to Goodwill. Give it to someone that it brings joy to. And let's not even concern about the dollar value in 10 years if it's in its package or not. And Kevin Smith, when he buys a new comic, the first thing he does, tears the cover. Ruins the value immediately so he can enjoy the comic for what it is, not for what the price could be in the future. And I love that mentality. He doesn't need money.
I did not.
He needs joy. Yeah.
I did not know that about Kevin. Okay.
He doesn't want to be a collector anymore. He wants to be, he just wants to enjoy the story. That's what we all got here originally for, was the story. It's like, yeah, let's break out of the collecting mindset. Let's just be fans again and go, boy, wasn't that neat?
The terrible part of this is I now have to move to a mercenary moment here. I got to mention that the news portion of today's show is brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner, Marvelous Disney. And for a worry-free travel experience, please book online at Storybook Destinations. Okay, now that I've finished totally derailing the noble statement that you made.
No, but the idea was that you want to have fun, you book a trip to Disney. You'll have fun, right?
Okay.
Isn't that the whole goal?
There we go. Thank you for redeeming that moment. Okay.
It's noble.
Picking up where we left off on last week's show, you and I were talking about how Hellstrom took us both by surprise, kind of snuck out of nowhere. I had a busy week, wasn't able to check it out myself, but you, on the other hand, you did the deep dive on this new Hulu series, right?
I did 10 episodes, and I want to try and do it as spoiler-free as possible and as brief as possible. We don't need to get onto all the whatnot about it. It's like a spooky X-Files, Jim. I wouldn't call it horror, but if you were able to watch, you remember when X-Files wasn't about aliens, they did like a Monster of the Week episode every once in a while. Maybe it was a werewolf. That's what this feels like. If Mulder and Scully were brother and sister, and they had the powers of demons. Now, last week I was saying that because the Hellstrom siblings are the sons of Satan, and normally in places like the Bible Belt where you have a lot of religious folk, they're not going to watch that type of material, and it's understandable. So I was wondering, is this going to even take off? And their way around it is they just said, well, their father was a serial killer. And that explains really nothing, Jim, because I was then wondering, well, how'd they get the powers of demons? I mean, If the Dahmer guy ended up having kids, it doesn't automatically pass along the power to harness fire and levitation and stuff like that. No, you should just be a regular person. So, and then you get to the last episode, and there is a hint that maybe it was Satan the whole time, but they leave it at a cliffhanger because someone was under the delusion that they would get to do a season 2 and not have their legs kicked out from underneath them unceremoniously. It's not good enough to where people are going to be sending in, baby diapers to revive the show or whatever fans do to revive shows. It's not going to be that good. And as far as their first adventure into Marvel of Fear, is probably their last as well.
I'm sorry to hear that. Just the other day, I was thinking back on. Did you ever see any of the Kolchak movies, the Night Stalker, the Night Strangler?
Oh yeah. Back in the old day.
That was one of the reasons why Hellstrom was kind of on my radar. I used to get a kick out of that show, which only. They did the 2 movies, and then they did a season of the show, and it was Darren McGavin himself who pulled the plug because he didn't like that it had devolved kind of into a Monster of the Week show. It was taking what made the original film special and kind of cheapened them.
Yeah, as far as the overall story, the story was strong in its direction. It didn't deviate and meander and lollygag. It got to its point. And then the thing is, I really had to wonder about this, Jim, because they had blood. They had graphic language. I don't quite think they went so far as to have any sort of nudity or anything quite like that. And they did have some things that some people would consider gore a little bit later in the show, like around episode 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's when it started to get ratcheted up a bit. But the whole time I never felt fear. I never felt suspense. I never felt edge of my seat. And I was wondering, what's wrong with me? I mean, I know I've seen a lot of horror movies, especially growing up. I craved horror movies. And I was wondering, if I was watching this with someone who has not watched a plethora of horror movies over the last, 3 or 4 decades, would this unsettle them? Would this creep them out in any way? And I just didn't feel. I mean, I've seen a ghost movie where I get spooked. Oh, what's behind there? Don't go in that room. I can fall for that. But this just never really grabbed me in any sort of horrific, fearful way, which is why I end up equating it directly to X-Files, because X-Files never once scared me. Doesn't mean it was a bad show.
No.
Just was never spooky.
Yeah. Well, it's Spooky Mulder. Hey,
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for taking one for the team there and watching that, and I will maybe at some point circle back to that. To pivot back to our last show, Aaron and I talked at length about Jamie Foxx being cast in the new Spider-Man movie and the significance of that. And I think you and I went back and forth about 70% of people right now are afraid to go back to movie theaters because of COVID. And so the studios are supposedly thinking that, well, the way we'll get them back are these big film, to do a big film with a lot of, name performers. And I suggested that maybe that's what they were doing with Jamie Foxx, and you were not a big fan of that idea?
No, I was only not a fan if he was Blue Electro. If he was Blue Electro, that meant he was Amazing Spider-Man 2 Electro, and that was where I became all monkey poo and hand fling at screen, out the theater.
I'd almost gotten that image out of my head. Thank you for, okay. Hey, all right. So
if he's going to be playing a different version of Electro, I know what the theory is that you're about to pitch, and I'll upfront it with, I don't believe it, but go right ahead, sir, and I'll defend on the backside of my belief.
See, here's the thing. 4 days after you and I record that show, we get the news that Benedict Cumberbatch is joining the cast of Spider-Man 3 as Doctor Strange. And initially the thinking was, okay, so Spider-Man Homecoming, we had Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, Iron Man, plays the mentor. Then in Spider-Man Far From Home, we had Samuel Jackson's Nick Fury, also in the mentor role. So it's like, okay, so this must be what's going on. Doctor Strange is now going to be the mentor of this movie.
Oh, I'm going to want to interject a moment right there.
Okay.
Strange and Spidey have teamed up dozens of times, so I would have, when I saw that he was going to be, I just assumed We finally get a moment where they team up and get to hang out for a minute. Didn't have to be mentor.
Okay.
Just a moment of team up, but go ahead.
Well, also, didn't you mention that, what was it with the Spider-Man PlayStation game that you come across
You can find the
Sanctorum?
Yeah.
And Spidey actually comments on it because he can't get into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many team-ups, though. I mean, there's Wolverine and Spidey have gone toe-to-toe so many different times with hilarious smart-mouthed results. Yeah, there's just so many wonderful team-ups because they happen in New York City, because that's where a lot of these characters call home. And I think that's one of the things where, from my perspective, I do believe that Spider-Man has almost been held back by having too many other Marvel characters in his movie. He's a strong enough character where he could just go without having Iron Man and Sam Jackson and, you know, playing Nick Fury. He could just be a Spider-Man doing a spider thing, and that would be fine. And I know that obviously Marvel wants to tie it all together and make a big cohesive universe. That's great too. It's like you can have a scoop of ice cream and boy, that's delicious. But here's 12 more scoops. Here's some sundae sauce. Here's caramel. Here's whipped cream. Here's some cherries. Here's some nuts. Let me just ratchet your jaw open and start cramming marshmallows down your throat. At a point, you're going to say too much sugar is not good for me. I need you to stop, please. Back off with the spoon.
Well, okay. Look, having set up that analogy, let me explain how Kevin Feige is running the Marvel ice cream store.
31 flavors, all in the same movie.
Yeah, well, face it. In fact, I think on the last show, you flat out asked, so what's the plan now? I mean, everything's been delayed, derailed. What can possibly be the plan now, especially with, Kevin having previously made such a big deal about how the Disney Plus limited series will set up story arcs that will then play out in the theatrical films and that sort of thing. Called a friend at Marvel and asked him to, all right, so what's going on here? Doctor Strange got shifted to November of next year. And then, like every film that was planned for 2020 and 2021, it got pushed back yet again to now March of 2022. And Spidey 3 basically shifted into the spot that was opened by Doctor Strange being pushed back. The original plan was that WandaVision would begin airing in December of 2020, and it would complete its run in January. And then March of 2021 was when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to happen. And so the idea was that Scarlet Witch is still grieving for Vision, alters reality to try to work through her grief. This in turn opens the multiverse, and now Doctor Strange has to try to fix what Wanda has done. Evidently, the new thinking now is WandaVision is shot, and it does in fact blow open the doors to the multiverse. Doctor Strange is not going to arrive in theaters now till March of 2022. But we do have Spidey, which is opening in December. This idea began to sort of come up, as they were working on the film, this John Watts movie, to the effect of, remember how the last film ended. We saw J. Jonah Jameson release to the world the news that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. That's the storyline that starts Spidey 3. This is a Peter Parker who wants his world reset. So supposedly it's in that space where he's trying to get back to the world that he previously had, where he had a secret identity. Somehow Wanda sets these events in motion where we get the impact of the multiverse on modern day Manhattan.
Well, so far the concept is, and the reason we have numbers is to keep track of silly facts like these. So we're in the 616, right?
Right.
And if, hypothetically, if Wanda has her breakdown that creates a multiverse, and our Peter wants to reset his life so he is back to having his secret identity back, he's not the 616 Peter, he's a different one.
Well, but as the story was explained to me, it's because he, wants to try to find, this place where he's a secret identity again, that opens the door to bring other Spideys in. And I know your feelings on this.
Right. Might as well throw Venom in there while we're at it. Make it real good.
Well, and we'll get to that in a moment. But there's been a very persistent rumor that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire have been asked to appear in Spider-Man 3. In fact, Sony got so many queries about this. They issued a statement just last week, and the wording is fascinating. It's not a flat-out no. It reads, "Those casting rumors are not confirmed." Very easy to say no. No, that's not what happened. But a piece of video popped up online and was pulled down within 12 hours that showed a very talented young African-American actor performing an audition scene for a live-action Miles Morales.
Now, was this a video of him recording himself in his bedroom on an iPhone, or was this actually in a casting situation where he had a director or someone associated with Disney or Marvel or Sony in the room?
That's why it got pulled down. It was the latter.
Okay.
Now,
so all we've heard so far in the official wording is appear in Spider-Man 3, which really means, if you remember how Brad Pitt appeared in Deadpool 2, he was in there for like, I think 7 frames of film. So maybe it's a thing where they show up, say hello, wave at the camera, and then get whisked off screen. I really, really, really doubt that they're going to have a story arc where there's 4 Spider-Men through the entire film, a Miles Morales version, because you've got 3 Peter Parkers and a Miles. Why that number of? Why not do it where you have different Spider-Men, or why are they not all Peter? That doesn't make sense. The other thing is, like I said, with Andrew Garfield, that's like inviting back George Clooney with the bat nipples and going another round with that. I don't see that being cool. And creatively, it would be Disney completely ripping off what they've already done, what Sony had already done with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. There is no need to ape that much of that content into Spider-Man 3. It would make it seem like a very pale comparison of something we've already had, that it should be new and exciting and bold and different. And the idea that the way that the media currently sounds is like, nope, it's going to be 90 minutes of Toby and Andrew and Tom all side by side for the full 90 minutes. It's like, nah, I think they might be together for a minute tops.
okay.
Because Tom Holland's our star.
Well, all I can tell you at this point is that Spider-Man 3 began shooting today in Queens. And again, they're doing a lot of location work before they then go to Atlanta and shoot at the Pinewood Studios where Marvel has its giant complex. So with the hope of getting to see multiple, Spider-Man together on this set, paparazzi is just hounding the set already, and it's going to be challenging. This
Has anyone seen Tobey Maguire in the last 10 years? Who knows? He might have been eating pound cake for the last 10 years. He might not be in Peter Parker shape.
Supposedly, Kevin Feige is now looking to use Spider-Man 3 as sort of the hammock, as it will, between WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness, that we get to see the impact of what Wanda did in Peter's universe. We have Doctor Strange step in. And again, I think you're right. I think that it's unlikely we're going to see a mentor situation. We're possibly going to see these two working together to try to deal with what's happening in modern day Manhattan. And then,
right.
But the idea is that in much the same way that Captain America Civil War then set up a lot of what happened, a lot of the relationships and that sort of thing that we then saw pay off in Infinity Wars and Endgame. That's kind of the belief now, that what happens in Spider-Man 3 will then set up what Doctor Strange faces in Multiverse of Madness. And by the way, that's also gearing up. In fact, we just saw the casting of Xochitl Gomez. She's thought to be playing America Chavez, a.k.a. Miss America, who's a superhero who hails from another universe rather than the main MCU. So I get what you're saying, Aaron. I really do. But there's an awful lot of evidence piling up that this, and again, I apologize because I know you hate the idea of this sort of movie, just piling up stars in a project with the notion of, well, this will convince all of those people who are frightened to go to theaters right now because of COVID to come out and watch a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie.
Well, I think part of that is, and what Regal was asking for essentially was Hollywood needs to put out blockbusters, and it has to be consistent. There has to be like a movie just played, I missed it, and I kind of feel bad about it, but not quite. Oh, another one just played? Well, I really did want to see that one. Oh, a third one just played. What the hell? Yeah. That's when I'm going to start going, geez, I really want to go to the theater because I've missed a lot of cool stuff. And I'm feeling left out now. Yeah. That's the thing that's going to motivate me as a consumer American type person is, I've got to go on emotion of what drives a person. It's being left out of the crowd. Other people are talking about the thing. It was like Mandalorian. You know how bad it sucked for people over in England that did not have Disney Plus, and us Americans are just posting spoilers every Friday about what we saw on Mandalorian, and we just basically fed them the whole plot, the whole time, and they're like, we just want to see it for ourselves. We feel so left out. I would pay anything to see it right now so I can stop getting secondhand information from it and just see it for myself. It's going to come from Hollywood has to release those blockbusters regularly for me to feel like I'm missing out on events before I'm going to be convinced to step foot in a theater, because right now there's nothing you can release that would make me like Dune. Dune right now is number one on my hit list. And if that were in a theater right now, I would be really tempted. I would ask, is there anyone else in the theater at 8 o'clock in the morning? If not, I'll buy that one ticket.
Okay.
And you have gotten me in the theater because I want to see that movie really, really bad. So you got to pile up a stack of dominoes and knock all them suckers down and make me feel like I missed out on the entire world of entertainment for a year.
Okay, but here's the thing that, again, you mentioned Regal, and they were talking about how maybe they'll be reopening in early 2021. Did you see the story in the past week or so how about the AMC theater chain
running out of money? Yeah.
By the end of the year.
I was talking to a friend. It's an advertising thing, and I don't want to get into the technicals of advertising. Yep. But again, the thing that I was getting back to was it's not really that the theater system is broken right now. It is their consumer. The general public is afraid, and you need to find a way to convince them that it's safe. And one theater was doing a thing where you would text your snack order, and they would put it up in a sealed box and leave it at the counter, and there is no human interaction there, so there's a safety thing. But the other thing is the idea of, you know what, since there's really not many movies, instead of wasting your time playing Ghostbusters and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which are great movies, but I've seen them 1,000 times. Let's say that Dune came out today. What if you put Dune in all 15 theaters, and you actually booked it out to a family, like one family per theater? Because no one's coming. You've got empty theaters. So you're taking a loss no matter what. What if I can get you 15 families versus 0? Can I do that? And if I can get 15 families to go out in the world and say, I went to see the movie and I survived. And if I can get word of mouth going and other people going, oh, you saw that movie? Really? It was safe? What? Oh, you rented the whole theater by yourself? Wow. And then you start designating where it's like one family gets this corner, that family gets that corner, this family gets... You got 4 corners of the theater, and you got one group in the middle. That's 5 families I can now fit in the theater. You got to work numbers, and you got to work psychology. But that's what I'm going to say about that. It's a trick on behalf of the theater, of what they got to do to earn the trust back, and it's the studio system has to provide the bait, and it can't just be a movie with stars. It's got to be worth watching.
That's a fascinating idea, but let me throw a complication at you that BioReconstruct, the gentleman who flies over and gets those amazing behind-the-scenes shots. Just this morning, he and I were tossing instant messages back and forth, and he brought up the fact that the real issue right now is generational. You have this generation of kids who have grown up watching things on their phone. And they just don't have the same sort of connection to the going to the movies, communal experience thing that our generation has. And what BioReconstruct put out is like, you have to understand, this is a breaking point.
Let's just ask a really important question. How much did Avengers Endgame make by itself?
Damn near $2 billion.
Do you want to flush away a $2 billion a year revenue stream? That's only one movie, by the way. How many movies were billion-dollar earners for in 1 year?
I think Disney had 7 of them last year.
So there's $7 billion. And let's just toss the baby out with the bathwater on that one, because that's broken. We don't need that no more. $7 billion? Pshaw.
Well,
yeah, right.
Okay, but I'm talking...
I get the youngsters on the screen. I get that. But to say that it's broken and that you need to make a transition now is not totally accurate. You need an alternative. You need more than one.
We are creatures of habit. There are people who buy season tickets to their favorite team because they love going to the stadium. They love the communal experience. They love being there with tens of thousands of people and buying overpriced hot dogs and that sort of thing. And likewise, people like myself, I love going to the movies and having a whole audience react to a film and that sort of thing. But if a chunk of your audience falls out of the habit, movie theaters have been closed since March. And we're now talking about maybe February they will reopen. The combination of what we've been talking about, the 70% of would-be moviegoers who are concerned about their safety about going back to the movie theater. Once the theaters reopen, a good chunk of those folks are going to go back. But what about the people who do, in fact, fall out of the habit? Who, it's like, well, I don't do that anymore. I have my giant screen television at home. And just last week we were talking about the reorg of Disney and what that's potentially going to do to how things are released. Yes, there will be films that go out on what they call legacy platforms. That means theatrical release, on a big screen. But there's just as much, then now they're going to be creating a lot more content deliberately for streaming.
I think part of the challenge was about Disney Plus, because they tried to release Mulan and it didn't go over so well, and it's the problem of they have a double pricing structure all of a sudden at that point. Originally the promise was just this small monthly fee and we'll give you everything that we have, and then they go, oh wait, except this one thing, because special circumstances, please give us an exorbitant amount of money. Well, $30 versus a $20 purchase on a regular day, and now I got to pay $30 to just rent it because of the timing factor of how the system works. And it's like, no, I'm just going to wait till December until that comes out. And I think a lot of people chose that because that was what they're paying their fee for. And now, Disney's got to make a decision of, do we start actually giving a rat's patoot about actually selling media, because they're not really selling physical media like discs anymore. And I'll tell you, Jim, just last week, I got an email saying the entire Disney library has been upgraded on my iTunes account to 4K for free. And this was the thing where when I purchased the Apple TV 4K, if you purchase a movie for $20, if it doesn't exist in 4K yet, you get the 1080. But if in the future you get, if it gets upgraded to 4K, you automatically get that for free. That upgrade. And that was part of why we went with that device. And I was so angry because Disney held everything off of that because they wanted to charge a premium and make me pay $30 for their 4K offerings. And I didn't want to do that, so we had a stalemate at that point where I wouldn't budge and they wouldn't budge. And it was last week where they changed their mind finally and they said, you know what, screw it. It's all upgraded to 4K. You win. And my whole library just went cha-ching for free to 4K. So they did, in fact, change their mind about how they're looking at price points. Because they put all of their movies on sale for $9.99. Normally they're $20. So they cut everything to half price and went, please come buy something. Give us some money. We're even cutting our prices, which we never, ever do. But here's the thing, Jim. They've got Disney Plus. I didn't need to buy the new Marvel movies, but there was a couple that I had missing in my library digitally, and I, as an idiot, gave them like $40 for those movies when they've been streaming on Disney Plus for. I've already paid the fee. I've got the keys into the garden, but I still gave them money like an idiot, and it worked.
Speaking of which, we're going to talk in a sec about another change that Disney just made with the hope of getting customers to reconsider their relationship with certain arms of the company.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
Breathe deep. Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
Marvel Unlimited, and that's the online comic book library that Marvel set up. There's over 28,000 digital comics that they offer through this. But this was launched a year or so back, and in order to keep comic book realtors happy, the retailers, excuse me, they made a deal. Obviously, we want people to still buy the physical books. So we won't make the newer titles available till 6 months after they've been on store shelves. So with the notion of it's $9.99 a month with tax or $59.99 for a full year, again with tax. But just today, they crept in the window, and in a big way. They went from 6 months, you have to wait 6 months before these things show up digitally, to just 3 months. When you think about what the comic book retailers have been dealing with COVID, first they couldn't have the stores open, and then they could reopen their stores, but they had to have social distancing, and how they moved heaven and earth. I think you and I were talking about how outfits like Golden Apple were actually arranging that if you drove up, they'd bring your comic books out to you, that you wouldn't have to come into the physical store. This is a very big deal that now they've crept in the window to comic books go digitally in 3 months. I gotta wonder what the retailers are making of this.
I don't think it's that horrible. I mean, isn't that about the same as what we go between a movie to the digital and DVD release nowadays is about 3 months? So that's not destroying the movie industry. I don't think it should hurt the comic book industry all that bad. They're trying to have more value in their product, or increase value in their product. And one way to do that is make it more timely. And that's a good way to do it. So I'm all for it.
For me, now shortening this from 6 months to 3 months, I'm certainly tempted. Particularly this time of year, I'm certainly tempted because of the Marvel Zombie series. I got to tell you, Aaron, I hate zombies. On the other hand, I love Greg Nicotero, the guy who does the makeup for the Walking Dead television series. He's now graduated to being the executive producer of the number of the original Mothership show and the spinoffs. So the Marvel Zombie comic book series, which actually has a direct link to the Walking Dead, to both the comic book series and the TV series, because Robert Kirkman, the gentleman who, along with Tony Moore, came up with the original Walking Dead comic book series in 2003. Marvel thinks this book with its graphic style and that sort of thing is amazing. So they hire Kirkman, and he works on Captain America. He works on Marvel Knights and Fantastic Four. But eventually the editorial team pulls him in and is like, look, we love your Walking Dead stuff, and we have this whole multiverse idea. How would you feel about exploring the idea if a zombie apocalypse were to happen on a planet that had the Marvel superheroes on it? And this series gets launched in December of 2005, the 5-issue limited series, and it immediately becomes this smash hit. It's written by Kirkman and art's done by Sean Phillips. The story opens with Magneto as one of the only surviving human beings. So you have a villain who's now the hero of the story because he's trying to escape from all of these zombified Marvel superheroes. And because of their superpowers, folks like Captain America or Spidey actually retain just enough memory to realize what they've done. In fact, remember, there's a particularly horrifying panel that sort of alludes to the fact that Peter Parker may have actually eaten Mary Jane and Aunt May, and you get to see him consumed with guilt and shame before then the hunger of being a zombie overwhelms him. And it's this really bizarre dichotomy. The whole notion of the superheroes, but they're, in horrible, desiccated shape, and they still sort of behave like themselves, except, they still have their abilities.
Well, I mean, it gets really down to a core issue of who has Peter protected more than anybody in the history of comic books is Aunt May and MJ.
Yeah.
The mother figure and the love of his life. And what could possibly be worse than to be responsible for their death? But what's even worse than that is it was sick because you ate them. You nibbled on their little toes and you went, num, 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 num. I'm going to eat them little piggies. And you actually bit off them little pitties.
Well, all right. If we're talking about eating specific body parts, one of the other weirdest bends in the story, in fact, Black Panther is huge in the Marvel Zombies storyline. Just from his introduction alone, it turns out that the zombified giant man has been keeping the human Black Panther alive basically to snack on him. In fact, when we first meet him, he's missing an arm and a foot, and he somehow manages to get away. And he's a big part of how the Avengers, try to fight back against the zombie apocalypse. And
His new code name is Snack Man.
And the weird thing of it is that this remains popular today. There have been 3 and 4 different iterations of the Marvel zombie series over the years. But just last year, the folks over at DC Comics launched Deceased. 6-issue comic book series, kind of the same way that Marvel Zombie started. And this was published from May of through October of 2019. But in this case, you get to see iconic characters like Superman and Wonder Woman dealing with a zombie apocalypse and trying not to get infected. So will we ever see Marvel Studios do anything with the zombie comics? And I mean, we got
I think we already have. So
a little taste of it in Spider-Man Far From Home.
Do we need a full movie of Marvel Zombies?
I asked the very same question, and got a friend at Marvel Studios pointed to the fact that the animated What If stories show that. Yeah, that's
there. You go, perfect place.
Well, that's the thing. They have a half-hour episode being prepared just to get a sense of what would the reaction be, so we can look for that. And in fact, that's still on track. The hope is that will be available to air on Disney Plus in October of 2021. But I probably will watch it through fingers because, again, still have issues with zombies. Well, anyway, folks, that is going to do it for this week's installment of Marvel Us Disney. Also, should mention the other shows here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. We, of course, have Disney Dish with Len Testo. We've got Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, where we discuss animation news. We've got Looking at Lucasfilm with Dan Z, where we look at Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And we also have Universal Joint with Dustin Fuse. You can find us over on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. Look for Aaron and I to churn out a new Marvelous Disney in 2 weeks or so.